Blende River Viaduct, more commonly known as the Pass Lake Trestle, is a former railway structure located near Pass Lake, Ontario, 30 miles or 49 kilometers north of the city of Thunder Bay. It was constructed in 1912 for the Canadian Northern Ontario Railway, and at 2,258 feet or 688 meters long and 130 feet or 39 meters high, it is the largest railway trestle in central Canada. The history of the viaduct dates back to the early years of the Canadian Northern Railway. Beginning in 1896, William Mackenzie and Donald Mann, who would later form the company, began acquiring and constructing railway lines in the prairies all the way to Port Arthur, Ontario, now known as Thunder Bay. The company was very successful and provided a great benefit to the underserved agricultural areas of the Canadian West. However, the men realized that the long-term viability of the railway depended on a transcontinental connection. While they had constructed lines north from Toronto, they were extremely hesitant to build through the wilds of northern Ontario because of the huge projected cost and lack of perceived profit. They attempted, quite unsuccessfully, to negotiate a running rights agreement with Canadian Pacific for many years, as well as exploring other options. Eventually their hand was forced, however, and construction on the line between the Sudbury area and Port Arthur began in the latter half of 1911. One of the biggest challenges for this section of railway was the location of the line between Port Arthur and Nipigon, 71 miles or 114 kilometers to the east. In many places, the Canadian Pacific Line, which had been built through the area between 1884 and 1885, had secured the most advantageous route. This compelled Canadian Northern engineers to hug the shore of Lake Superior east from Port Arthur until they reached the Sibley Peninsula. Unfortunately, the path was now blocked by massive rock ridges that rise between 400 and 600 feet, or 120 and 180 meters above the level of the lake. The only viable passage lay to the south, a circuitous route that would add 5 miles of track to the line and force it through a narrow defile which became known as the Pass. To get there, the railway had to cross the Blende River Valley, where the watercourse itself was described as a rivulet, but the valley was wide and deep. W.P. Chapman, bridge engineer for Mackenzie Mann and Company, was placed in charge of the design and construction of the viaduct. On May 3, 1912, work began on the concrete substructure under the direction of well-known local contractor James Whalen. To support the bridge abutments and towers, the Kennedy Construction Company drove almost 2,000 piles and poured 3,600 cubic yards, or 2,750 cubic meters of concrete by July 30th. On August 20th, the Canadian Bridge Company of Walkerville, Ontario, began erecting the steel superstructure. 14 of the 20 spans are 75 feet or 23 meters long, while the remaining 6 are 60 feet or 18 meters long. They rest on towers that range in height from 40 to 115 feet, or 12 to 35 meters. The weight of the steel amounted to 5 million pounds, or 2,300 metric tons. The last span was placed an amazing 8 months after the commencement of construction on December 28, 1912. The viaduct was constructed to Dominion Government 1908 specifications, which meant it could support the weight of numerous 180-ton locomotives lined up end to end along its length. The total price was $350,000, or $8 to $9 million today. Regular passenger traffic began in October 1915 on the newly named Nipigon Subdivision, which ran between Jellicoe and Port Arthur. The Canadian Northern Railway, however, was not able to enjoy the fruits of its efforts for very long. In 1917, the financially troubled company was taken over by the Canadian government, and a year later became part of the newly organized Canadian National Railways. In 1923, the line became the Canadian National Railway's Dorion Subdivision. Shortly thereafter, a new section of railway was opened between Long Lac and Nakina, known as the Nakina Cutoff, which relegated the Dorion Subdivision to secondary status. Passenger service was terminated in 1956, and in 1960, the Dorion Subdivision and the more easterly Kinghorn Subdivision were merged into one line from Long Lac to Port Arthur. Traffic and revenues continued to fall in the ensuing years, and with the line requiring some expensive upgrades, including work on the viaduct, service was discontinued in May 2005. After failing to find a buyer, Canadian National removed the rails from the Kinghorn between 2008 and 2010. Although the rail line is now just a memory, structures like this endure, however, a testament to the efforts expended more than 100 years ago.